Good morning and good evening to everybody watching the first edition of the Packard Network Live for 2022. And I'm very pleased today to have a special guest and somebody I've known for a long time, a few decades. Don't remind me how old I'm getting, but I'm really pleased to have Georgine Muntz on the program today. And I'm going to talk just a little bit, introduce her a little bit, and set the backdrop, and then we'll get into an exciting conversation. But Georgine is the CEO at Visual Matrix, which is a company that's been around, I think, for a couple of decades, and she and her team in this firm, they support the hospitality industry for end to end with an easy to use management technology. And so maybe Georgine could talk a little bit about that in a moment, but it covers everything end to end, from housekeeping to reservations to, if you plot. I talk to people all the time about customer journey, and really that's a great company like, well, they look at everything from helps the hotel industry do just that. So I think that we're really pleased to have Georgine, you on the program today. And Georgine is also, as a CEO, board director, she's also has been and is a strategic advisor to private equity firms. So the breadth and depth of Georgine's experience is really qualifies her well to be a CEO and on this program to talk about culture and leadership. And we'll get into that in a minute. She's got an impeccable track record of creating long-term value for investors, transforming cultures, turning around businesses. It doesn't matter what the economy looks like. Georgine is the person that can actually go in and fix something. I'm also all the time telling people the story of the rising tide. When times are good, everybody does so well. But when the water lowers and everything, just those people with exceptional leadership and ability to foster a great culture do well. So it doesn't really matter what the environment is. And so I think that as we know, in the pandemic era, the hotel industry has really gone through some choppy times here. And so it's a great opportunity to talk to somebody like Georgine. And so, Georgine, welcome to the program. I'm going to catch my breath for a second and just say Happy New Year to you. And it's great to have you on board.
Happy New Year, Brett. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be the first guest of the year. It's going to be hopefully a much better year this year. We're very much looking forward to it in hospitality. And thanks for that wonderful introduction. That was lovely and maybe a little bit much, but I'll try to live up to it.
I'm sure you will. Just be you, and that's all that's really required. And so yeah, maybe we'll just kind of, before we get more into culture leadership, which is really the heart of it, maybe you could just spend, I don't know, a minute or two talking about the pandemic economy through your lens, and that could be as anything you want, as a consumer, as a CEO of Visual Matrix. I'd really be interested just to hear your views on kind of what it's been like and how you and your firm and your team are future proofing Visual Matrix against the future landscape.
Absolutely. That is definitely a hot topic for everyone in hospitality. I think most all of us know, because it affected us personally, that travel, and especially international travel, and certainly business travel, which is often the lifeblood of many hotels, was virtually gone for a period, and then still today severely reduced. Fortunately, leisure travel has come back in some ways. It's obviously not enough to cover the full spectrum, but it is back pretty healthy. It was back very healthy in the summer, which sounds like a lovely thing, but when you've gone from about 20% in some hotels, even to zero occupancy, back to 100%, that's quite a shift. So I've had the fortune or misfortune to live through that from a software company perspective. Our customers, over 2,000 hotels worldwide, all the states, 34 countries, depend on our software and our support, more importantly, to be available 24/7, 365 days a year. And that was not a challenge for us in that we did not lay off a single person during COVID. We were able, fortunately, to keep everybody on the team and keep them working with other things. And some of those things I'll talk about because they were related to future proofing. But we went from, and we and our customers went from very low occupancy, 1 or 2 people on the staff using our system, to within 4 weeks, 100% booked, overbooked, and people out traveling, which we were all extremely happy to see until we realized that the phone volume that we were receiving and their support volume went up 400% from baseline, not from COVID, from baseline.
Wow, baseline.
And baseline, which is, it was never, we've never seen anything like that in the 20 years this company has been in place. So that was really difficult. It was difficult for us and it was difficult for our customers. My team is extremely, they all come from hospitality. They've all usually worked behind a desk, cleaned rooms, and done every other role in a hotel. And so when they couldn't support their customers the way they were used to, it almost, they took it personally. So that was a challenge. So what we had to do is we had to pull together. And this is where culture is absolutely number one. When everyone has to pull together, when things are tough, when customers are angry and upset and struggling, that's when you know what you're really made of. And like you said, when the tide goes down, you need people to go put wheels on the boat because you got to keep going. So we went and did that. So it was like the cliche, fueling the jet mid-flight. It was like that because the phones were 400 and we changed out everything in our support, from the tools, the technology, the process, some of the people, because we had to add people. And so we were changing every single thing and trying to keep our customers up and running because we know exactly how much they need that revenue coming back. There's no more PPP loans, which saved many of them. They just had to get that revenue in and provide the service. The reason the volume was up was interesting, that many of them had to cut back their staff. When they went to rehire that staff, they were in other jobs related more towards delivery and driving and things.
Yeah, they'd moved on, right?
They moved on and they had good jobs and they were happy and they were getting their needs met there. So they couldn't come back to hospitality quickly or didn't want to. So we had a bunch of new people. And when you're at 100% occupancy, you don't have a lot of time to spend training people. It's not like you're sitting 3 or 4 new employees in a classroom for 3 days and teaching them everything they need to know. You're putting them out there and saying, please get these people checked in, get the reservations booked, get the rooms cleaned. So it was very interesting. Now,
so it really brought, if I could just interject right there, it really brought efficiency, the being nimble, being, like a great, I was talking to somebody early this morning from Asia, a great tennis player is always on her toes, right? And not her heels. And so you really had to be nimble with everything that you did. Probably your cycle times and everything that you had previously done really shortened, right? In order for you to accommodate
it
this.
did, but with every change you go over that hill, and so for a while it felt horrible, like nothing was working, and then we got over the hill and we're like, oh my goodness, our lives are going to be okay after all. But it was the culture. This team never quit. They never gave up, threw up their hands. They just said, okay, let's work faster, let's work overtime, let's try to cut down on the things we don't have to do and do more of the things that our customers need us to do, which is a big credit to the founder of Visual Matrix, David. During the pandemic, instead of laying people off, he determined what things are people going to need or have they already needed that we haven't had time to work on. And he spent time working on those. So when we came out of the pandemic, we had new tools for customers, and they're the ones you would think that you would have had all along, but they did not. Things like revenue management. So when you do get to a point where you're selling out, you can drop your discounts automatically so that you can capture that revenue when the demand exceeds your supply. So things like that people have always needed, but they did manually, they needed it fast during the pandemic. So he developed that entire tool to work seamlessly with other revenue tools that people already had in place. And that was a big win. The other thing was texting, auto responses and texting, which are very common in everywhere in all of our world. But in hospitality, they weren't as common. It was still that personal touch. You go to the front desk if you need something, you pick up the phone and say, I need towels. But he built in some texting tools that we were able to roll out and teach right at the end of the pandemic. People weren't very interested in doing more during the pandemic, but afterwards they came out and they said, okay, give us everything you have to make us more efficient. So there were some really smart things done at this company before I joined. And then after we were able to roll them out, which was a huge
I think that's great. We have, I'm just looking, we got a couple of people on LinkedIn engaging. Joe from Florida has just said it starts at the top and trickles down, right? And that culture, and you gave credit. And I think this is one thing a great leader does to, did you say David? Was it David?
David, yes. David.
Yeah, David. Yeah. David had the vision to be able to help shape the company even before you got there. And then you were then able to guide this company, through the crisis, and both of you on the same page, or otherwise that wouldn't have happened. And it does start at the top and trickle down. Joe, thanks for that observation. So Georgine, let's talk about we don't have a lot of time today, but what does it take? How do you define culture? Like, what would your advice be? There's a lot of companies, as you know, that unfortunately did not have the type of success that your company did during even today, right? Even we're now a couple years into this nightmare for a lot of people, but yet it's an opportunity for those that have had the right culture. What would your advice be to somebody that's their company's struggling? They've got to either improve things or they're thinking about getting out. I saw a survey. There was a survey on Bloomberg over the holidays, something to the tune of 70+% of businesses, CEOs think that they won't be in their current role a year from now. Okay, that's a pretty high number.
Amazing.
What would your advice be for these CEOs and even boards to think about how to recalibrate their culture?
So culture is simple, but it's very difficult. And what I mean by that is once you figure it out, it's a very simple thing. You need to care about and listen to people and help them get what they need and want to grow. If you've got that and you've got a culture that fosters that, it's very easy, but getting there can be extremely difficult. So I've had experiences in my career, which is, Brett, how many years, let's not talk about it, but many years. And I've seen all different types of companies. So I don't think there's one answer to this fictional CEO that needs to fix their culture, but I have learned over time, and I got this from someone talking about a culture lecture, that I've kind of created my own little secret weapon tool, and it's fairly simple. It is this: whenever I come into a new company, I spend the first whatever amount of time it takes talking to every single person in the company from top to bottom, left to right, if I can. Now, I like to manage small software companies, not 500,000 person companies. So it's a bit different, but in the companies that I work with, this works really well. Basically go in and I talk to every single employee first before I do almost anything else. And what I do is I have 3 questions that I ask them. The first question is, how do you like working here? And usually they'll tell me they like it or they don't like it. And then we'll talk about why or why not. And then the second question is, what can I do to make you like working here more or better? Make this a better place for you to work and for your team to succeed. And then we'll talk about that. And I make them give me 3, not 1 or 2, but 3, because the third one is usually the one that is really at the heart of the matter. And then the last question, and I think maybe the most important question, is what can you do to make this place a better place to work? And they also have to give me 3 things. I document every bit of that. I call the second question my things that I have to do. There's almost always a theme within 5 people. And I've never done this technique anywhere that communication wasn't towards the top. Appreciation wasn't in that mix. Clarity. Most people don't know what is expected of them. It's really hard to feel good about your culture and your job if you don't even know if you're doing it or not. Good, bad, or ugly. So getting those things down on paper and then actually doing them. So whatever trends towards the top, will become my first priority. And it's amazing if there's 50 people, we have 150 things they're going to do. I have 150 things or more that they've given me to do. And as we start working on them, hundreds of things are getting better every day and every week. And so
and they're interconnected too, because of the way that you didn't sit in a corner office and devise all of this yourself. I think that's really key, right?
It's absolutely key. And I laugh about it a little bit because I was in consulting for several years, and that's exactly what good consultants do. They don't come in and offer a PowerPoint on solving your company's problems. They come in and they ask the people, what's wrong? And the people doing the job know what's wrong, not the leaders. It's the ones doing the job. And so all you do is you go and you ask them, and you put it in a nice PowerPoint and you present it to the executives, and they think you have invented processes. So it's not difficult, but it's not done very often, sadly.
It's not. And Georgine, I have you and I worked in different industries, but I call this the steel building syndrome, right? So people sit in the ivory tower, and the first thing I used to do in flying into a country is I say, don't take me to the headquarters. I want to go to a branch. And it's the same thing, because that's where, as you just articulate, they know much better than leadership, unless they have the culture in place. Because I think anybody could talk to you today, and I think you'd have a pretty good idea as to what your customers are thinking, right? We'll talk more about that in a few minutes, and we'll talk about what you did early this morning as an example, right? But I think that money is made and lost at the client level, right? And so I think that's a great point. And okay, good.
I agree. And I would go to a branch too. I've never been in bank. Well, actually I did work in a bank branch for a while, but I was doing technology stuff and they didn't have an office for me. So I did get to see what happens in a bank branch. It's very interesting.
It is interesting, but whether it's banking or any form of retail or anything, right? I mean, software, what you're doing, it's really interesting. These similar things work, and you're really describing something. If you take a smartphone, right, a beautiful brand new smartphone, and you attempt to make a phone call without a SIM card in it or an eSIM, I don't care how hard you try or how good that phone is. Guess what? It's not going to work, right? And I think you're really touching on some critical points here. I think that's great. Georgine, do you believe in luck? That's a question out of right field.
No, I like that question. And I think that I do believe that some people are in the right place at the right time, and it's very beneficial to them. But I also think you can control it. This might be my type A controlling side of me, but I do think you can control the opportunities that come in. And if you want to call that luck, you can, but it has some impact. So if you want to be a CEO of a company and you need to have a certain degree, you need to put yourself in a position to be selected for that role. And then you need to do the work it takes to understand it. So I do believe in luck. But I also believe that the luckiest people do a lot of work to put themselves in the right places to get these benefits.
Yeah. So there is a degree of design and planning, preparation, however you want to, you want to phrase it. Yeah. So now I regularly mentor a group of currently Asian women in Asia, and then there's some women in Southern Africa, right? And these are separate groups, but there's a common part of the culture of the countries that they operate in, and these are top decile people. Okay, I only mentor people that are in the top decile, so they've got to, because we don't want to have to deal with I'm one person, and performance is not something I can really help remotely with. But in terms of their leadership and cultivating leadership, I can help with that. And one of the things that is common in that culturally, women tend not to be as assertive when they work inside of a foreign company. Local companies are a little bit different, but a lot of the women work for an international company. so they can learn and grow, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to going for leadership positions, and they've got the capability, in my opinion, but the assertiveness just isn't there. And I know to different degrees in the U.S. Where you've really concentrated. Some of that exists for women, and we all know the statistics of women on boards, and fortunately that's improving a little bit, but it's got a long way to go. Pay gap, all of these issues, but this specific issue about capable top performer, top decile, they want to do well, but they're just a little bit shy culturally to do it. But within the company, I can tell you, having worked for foreign companies, is that we love that. We want people to be more assertive and, to go for things. What would your advice be to women anywhere, not just in the example I gave you about being assertive and dealing with, a history that might not have been the most gender friendly, if that's
Absolutely.
the right phrase?
No, you hit on a huge problem, Brett, and it's not just in other countries. I also call it the Southern woman syndrome, because the culture is you serve, you don't ask for what you want, you don't necessarily take credit for the things you do. So it's very uncomfortable for even women here in Texas and Oklahoma to, let's call it, brag about their accomplishments. So some of the things I do, I also mentor a lot of young women leaders. Absolutely one of my favorite things to do. And there's a few things that I really encourage them to do. One is know these things, like make sure you understand where the company gains value and where your role can add to that. And then make sure you understand where your specific activities have contributed to that, and then speak to it in that language. Don't say, I'm just building my team. You say, my team is doing things faster, which is contributing to this amount of additional value for our customers and our company. So a lot of times people don't speak to those above them in the right language. So it's that they're not understanding how they're creating value. So first of all, know what value you're creating, communicate it well, and then be very direct and candid. What you'll find is, at least in my experience, you'll find that if something happens to a man or a woman, the way they address it is very different. The woman might say nothing and go talk to her husband about it at home. Like, this person did this to me in a meeting. And a man, if somebody did something rude, cut them off, took their idea without giving them credit, the other man might very often say, well, thanks for repeating my idea. The woman might sit there and fume about not having that idea credited to them. So I also encourage them to speak. You've got to stand the ground you want. And if it's your ground and you're not standing it and you're going around to another office and complaining about it, you're part of the problem. You've got to solve the problem itself.
Right.
But then on the flip side, it's a super tight wire to walk, because assertive and aggressive are very close. And with women, if we're assertive in some ways, it'll be interpreted as aggressive by the other gender potentially, or others, and it wouldn't be for men. So it's a double standard. You have to get as far as you can get within your own style, but you do have to say some uncomfortable things.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's a fine line, like you say, right? And, we could talk about this subject all day, but it is. And I think what I'd like to just throw out there, there'll be a lot of people that see this, especially on replay over the weekend. And what I'd encourage all of you watching to take away from this segment and Georgine's advice is that you can reach out for help. There are people that can help you. Okay. People on this platform we're on 4 platforms now, but especially LinkedIn, reach out. But if you're on Facebook, reach out. You can reach out to me and I'll direct you, okay, to somebody that can talk to you for your specific situation. And I may even, be able to help you directly as well. But we've been through these types of experiences and in terms of creating cultures. Georgine and I both have where you can elevate women, but it does take a little bit from both parties, both your employer as well as yourself. And so reach out for help if you don't know how to do this. Okay. You can direct message me and I'll make sure that you get that. I think that's great, Georgine. So Georgine, why don't we just touch a little bit on culture. Then I want to talk briefly about leadership before we close out. And if any of you have questions, please put them in the comments on LinkedIn and Facebook. I've got them on my screen here if you do. And we'll try to get to those in just a couple of minutes. Georgine, so quickly on the culture, how'd you start your day today?
Well, today, and I accidentally double booked this, Brett, but I wasn't going to cancel on you. I had booked an 8-hour shift at a hotel in Louisville. One of our amazing customers has a great hotel here right by the mall. And I'd asked him if I could come work behind the front desk and be a front desk clerk and do some housekeeping. Those are two very core activities that need to happen at the hotel every day. And he was gracious enough to let me do that. So I was behind the desk for a while, already learned like a million things that I needed to know. And then I was cleaning a room right before this started. And I was telling Brett before we got on that I forgot how hard vacuuming is because I have teenagers. So if I need something vacuumed now, I get them to do it. But I was vacuuming just a regular hotel room and I was sweating, and it's not hot in here. It's probably 70, somewhere in that temperature range. Sweating, dripping, and I was tired. And I was like, if I had to do 20 of these today, I would never have to work out again. So yeah, I was here trying to walk a mile in the shoes of our customers so that I could really better understand where they're coming from. Most of my team has done this. They've done this job, so they already know. But because I came in from a technology company that wasn't in this space, I didn't know what it was like. And so I'm so excited. It's probably the most exciting thing I've done since I've been here is to get to actually come out and be a customer.
That's fantastic. And that gets back to what you spoke about earlier about really getting out there and understanding what's going on, on the ground, right? So that you can take your company to the next level. Georgine, leadership. So from a leadership, we've talked a lot about culture, leadership, two very different things, two necessary things. How do you talk to your team, your leadership team? I don't know how big your organization is, but what is the dialogue, your development, if you put on a leadership development lens on, I'm sure you're grooming people to be your successor, down the road as well. How do you view all of that?
Well, it's all very individualized and specific, to a person. So the way that I usually do that is first I need to get to know the business and their needs. And one of the key things, or one of the most important activities, I think, in leading my leadership team, it's 6 people on my direct team reporting to me, is a monthly one-on-one. And they get an hour and a half, same time, same day, unless we need to reschedule it, which is not unless it's vacation or other circumstances that we can't control. An hour and a half to spend time with them, and they set that agenda. I want to hear how they're doing personally and what's going on with their family and their life. That's what we spend the first bit on. And then the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about the key projects we are working on as a team, and if there's anything they need from me to do their job better, if there's anything their team needs from them that I can help them obtain. So we spend a little bit of time on the business. And then the last 30 minutes, depending on what's going on at the time, is we'll talk about, especially at the end of year, beginning of year, what are your goals? When you retire, where do you want to be? Sometimes it's not even in this space or company, but still knowing those things, there are always ways that you can help people get what they want. And I think if, as a leader, if you think about, my job is not to get what I want. My job is to make sure that my team gets what they want. Everybody wins, because what I want is the success of my team. That's really now, at this point in my career, the thing that gives me the most satisfaction is seeing someone who might have started here end up 2 or 3 levels closer to where they want to be in their career. That's the thing. It used to be being really good at this thing or that thing, or making more money, or doing a better job running something. Those were the things that really got me excited. And now what gets me excited is seeing my team members and their team members go up the levels that they want to go up.
Not a greater feeling than that, right? And I can tell what's important to you in terms of your legacy, right? Many years from now when you're gone, what will people say about you, right? And how you impacted their lives. And, Georgine, you're very kind and competent leader as well. And I think that you always put people first. I know I've seen people on social media talking about, people first. That's your theme. And I think you've really backed that up in this, half hour that we've had together. And any parting words, Georgine, for the audience that we might have kind of missed because of our time constraints that you want to get in around culture or leadership?
Well, I think that, and this is kind of me personally, I'm very biased towards learning. So always keep learning, go out and do something new and different as much as you possibly can, because even in COVID, it keeps us from getting too concerned about what's on the news, because it's probably not much we can do to control that. So just keep learning, keep growing. And that's people and processes and tools and technology and travel. My family's travel fanatics. So just kind of keep moving forward, and learning is one of my favorite ways to do that.
I think that's fantastic. And, for those of you watching, I don't have time to learn. I'm, doing my job, so let me say it again, right? So take 30 minutes a day. Anybody can find 30 minutes. It doesn't matter. You need to take a coffee break anyway. Take 30 minutes, go somewhere with your headphones and your mobile phone. Don't scroll through Facebook. Get on a platform like LinkedIn and pick 5 people. This is how you can start your learning that Georgine's talking. Pick 5 people, study them for 30 minutes a day. You do this for a month, and that's almost a full day, right? It's almost a full work day. So you can always create the time to do it. It's really a matter of doing that. And Georgine, I completely agree with you. It's something that anybody can do anywhere, every single day, right? And develop that new skill.
Look at what's on YouTube alone. Like you could spend hours taking high-level courses, and our kids are going to be so much smarter than us because they learn everything. They want to learn how to do something. My husband, who of course Brett, will ask, well, how did you learn how to do that? And he'll I watched it on YouTube or the internet.
Yeah, they're so resourceful, right? And I think if we could be as resourceful as this younger generation that you're talking about, we might be a lot further along even with managing this pandemic, right?
Absolutely.
If you think about it that way. So I think that's an important point as well. Georgine, I'm mindful of the time, and I know you've got to get back to work and cleaning some rooms today.
I have another one to do. So.
Learning about the business and everything. But I'd like to really thank you. I've only had 2 Americans on this program since it started, I don't know, 9 or 10 months ago, and really honored and pleased to have you on the program today. And so I appreciate you prioritizing me over your double bookings. That means a lot. So I'm happy to return the favor. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you. We need to see each other in Oklahoma more.
Yeah, most definitely. And everybody, thank you for tuning in. And for those watching the replay, thank you for watching it. Next week, the cameras are going to move to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I'll be speaking to just an absolutely incredible woman there. And I'll release details on that next week so that you can put it in your calendar. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody again next week.